Hi, I'm Sam Heifel from Entertainment Weekly. I am joined now by the cast and director of Kong Skull Island. I have to tell you guys, I just watched the trailer for this. I'm so excited. I'm also very nervous. Friends won't go with me to see King Kong related movies because I cry so much. But I know it's really, my brother sat a seat away from me, so I was by myself in the last one, but it's fine. But I know, Jordan, you've talked about this is not the Beauty and the Beast story, this is something else entirely. So I'm curious why you chose, why this story, and also whatever you can tell us about this story.
When we first started talking about this film, there's been so many great versions of Kong, and Kong he's an icon, he is film history. And so if we're going to make a new King Kong movie in a world in which people will just make remakes and remakes and remakes and reboots and reboots and reboots, we very explicitly wanted a purpose for this to be. An actual fundamental reason why we're telling the story. And so when we sort of zeroed in on the idea of 1973 and what was happening in the world and the way that time period parallels right now and all of the crazy shit going on, it's a really wonderful and amazing thing to take a group of people from that era in which they had one foot in the old guard and one foot in the new guard and thrust them into a world where they're confronted with being put back in the food chain and being confronted with myth and being confronted with creatures that they look at and the only thing they can do is reconcile to say, that's a god. I'm looking at a god, and what does that do to you? And so we wanted to tell a new story for the first time within the mythology and within the sort of world of what people know about Kong, but tell a completely different story that I think has a purpose for being, that is based on a character level.
Sure. And for the actors, were you all just pretty much sold at the idea of Kong? Did it take much more than that?
Well, it is. I think it's a privilege to be part of the mythology. He's an icon. Sure. He's been an enduring icon for 100 years in cinema. He's loved. You cry at all the time.
I cry all the time.
We all do. So yeah, that there was that aspect of just the privilege of being able to re-examine and reinterpret the myth. Mm-hmm. But the script the idea was so good and it was so new and it all came from Jordan that this early 70s is a time when it might be imagined that there were still unexplained or unsolved mysteries on the planet.
Sure.
And I think we need those. I think we always have. We need to be, as a society and as individuals, we need to be humbled by nature, and we are when we travel and when we, when you see animals in the wild. And I think Kong speaks to that.
Sure.
The need to feel small in the universe.
Yeah. And John, your character, this is what I'm taking from the trailer, so it could be very off, but he seems to be the guy who has a lot of background knowledge, who maybe knows a bit more than some people.
Yeah, he knows more than he's saying. He gathers these forces together, gets a group of, they call themselves the Sky Devils, a helicopter crew from Vietnam, to take them into Skull Island. He ostensibly said he wants to look for rare earth elements. But we know better, don't we? There's always something up with this guy. He has very definite questions of his own, and he needs answers for.
Okay, Jordan, sorry.
No, never mind.
Jordan, why was the size of this creature so important to you?
The size was important because of what I said earlier, where, look, we wanted to make him big. We wanted to sort of go back to the 33 version, in which he's a bipedal ape, something that walks on 2 feet. But it needed to be big enough so when us as humans are dwarfed by it, when we stand there in the shadow of it and you look up at it, your brain can only reconcile it to be a god. Mm-hmm. Something unlike anything you've ever seen. And so there's a lot of discussion about how big that has to be so you feel dwarfed, so you feel insignificant in its presence, and then suddenly it instantly makes you feel that there is something bigger and greater than us, and there are unknown elements of the world that we forget and we gloss over because we all go about our daily lives. And so it needed to be big enough that you just stood up in it in a cross section of awe and terror.
Yeah. Was the trailer the first time you all had actually seen Kong? Because spoiler, you don't actually film with a huge.
Yeah. It's cool that you barely see him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the neat part.
They had seen concept art. I'd showed them a lot of sort of development art along the way and a lot of just mood imagery. The design of Kong took a long time to sort of to narrow in on, but just we had a lot of pieces that evoked what it should feel like, what I just said about when you stand in the presence of this thing, or you see it dwarfing it, or you see it against the sunset. And so, a lot of that concept art was stuff that I looped them into very.
It was good that they rejected the concept of Kong wearing a derby and smoking a cigar.
That was a weird one.
Wearing a circus vest.
Not all of my decisions are the best decisions. Sometimes you're not infallible, and there was a dance sequence we cut out. John, you pitched for a karaoke sequence, so sometimes your
Well,
ideas
he
aren't
couldn't
great
sing.
either.
He couldn't carry a tune. He
Well,
was a little pitchy.
That's a
deep dog.
byproduct of what happens on set when things don't work out.
It probably still would have made me cry. Kong dancing
Yeah.
probably would have.
Yeah,
probably would
definitely.
have cried. Is there potential, because it is much more about the island this time around, is there potential for other creatures?
If you should look closely at the trailer.
Oh.
Yes, the
Maybe I should look closely.
Yeah.
a big part of it is creating a living, breathing place.
Sure.
We sent them to Vietnam in these really practical, tangible, tactile locations so that they could be as in their element as possible, so that when they're interacting with Kong or other creatures, it could be as real as possible. But it's not just about Kong, it's about the ecosystem of this place. And there's a long history in Skull Island of other creatures, but our creatures are not the same that you've seen in other
There's
movies.
a lot of inbreeding.
That's a great tidbit about Skull Island.
Yep.
A lot of inbreeding. For you all, what was maybe like the most difficult part of making this movie?
Well, it's like the difficult parts end up being the parts that are the most memorable. Because you talk about seeing Kong in the trailer, and all of us were living with the idea of Kong on set every day. And as Jordan says, you're trying to conjure in your mind the image of something that is moving and wonderful and terrifying and inspiring, and you're drawn to it and pushed away from it. And so you have to supply with your imagination what that might be. And sometimes that's a challenge, but then it's also the most thrilling, because it's when you see it all matched up together. It's thrilling to see it, sort of those reactions be appropriate.
We also were in a lot of really harsh environments
Yeah.
and locations where, Jason and Tom, our last couple of days, we were running around in a swamp in Vietnam that normally, actors would be losing their minds and the crew would be losing their minds.
I mean,
we looked around at how stunning it was, and we had this weird moment where we looked at each other and they looked at me, because the whole scene was not necessarily written in a swamp, it was on land. And then we were like, we're going to be in this
in a swamp.
In a swamp.
Credit to Jordan, he was in there too. With waders though.
Okay.
But he was still in there.
But you look around and that stuff's so hard, but also I think one of the hardest things was, on a movie like this, you try and interject as much authenticity and life into it. And so there's a lot of moments that all of us, be it improv or just finding moments, finding beautiful things when the sun's going down, being able to steal shots, find things that can work their way into the movie that make it feel more authentic.
Yeah.
Because I think authenticity is a huge part of what we're going
It's
through.
like there's a shot of Bree and myself in the trailer, which we caught just at the end of the day. Do you remember? And it's in the swamp, And it's not. This is no like Hollywood swamp. It's a swamp.
What is that Hollywood swamp?
You know what I mean?
We really got to give a lot of credit to Jordan Boy Roberts
Yeah.
for that, because he's such a. I always say that he's a mixture of a DP and a director together, because he's a very visual person, but understands that the relationship is really what shows on screen really good. But he's also the type to be like, yo, we got this dope thing that we really want to do. Look, give me the steady cam, strap me up, like let me do it. You know what I mean? And that energy really carries. You know what I mean? Like when you got electric eel swimming between your legs, you're like, oh my God, I need a little, I need a
That's
little
not a
boost of
metaphor.
energy.
Yeah,
You know,
that
he's
was on the
definitely
weekend.
God help us, you know what I mean? So it was definitely a fight, but it was a good fight, And
I
now
think you
we're
can
at
see
the
that in
end.
the
So.
trailer. You can see like that we went to these extraordinary places. You
Right.
know, that like I think you can see that like Jordan and the crew took us to the ends of the earth and places that are beautiful and dangerous.
Yeah.
And that
Scenery in
you know.
Vietnam is not to be believed.
Yeah.
It's otherworldly.
We had to ride 3 boats to work one day.
Yep.
It was pretty cool.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to cry at your movie. And stick around to EW.com for all your Comic-Con news.